The signal that changed everything. The year was 2234. Humanity had long since cast its gaze beyond the limits of Earth, stretching its reach into the void. Mars was no longer just a dream, but a thriving colony. Titan's methane lakes shimmered beneath human-built domes. Even the cold, silent expanse of the Kuiper Belt was home to mining stations extracting resources from ancient ice and rock. But humanity's ambition did not stop there. The Terran Expeditionary Fleet, a coalition of Earth's greatest scientific and military minds, was tasked with venturing into deep space, far beyond the Sol system. Their mission: explore, document, and, if fortune allowed, make contact with extraterrestrial life. No one could have predicted what they would find. The anomaly. Captain Elias Rains stood at the bridge of the TES Odyssey, humanity's most advanced exploratory warship. With reactive plating, gravitic shielding, and an FTL drive that bent space itself, it was a testament to human ingenuity. The ship's crew was composed of the best Earth had to offer: scientists, engineers, diplomats, and soldiers, each prepared for the unknown. But nothing could have prepared them for the signal. "Captain, we're receiving an unknown transmission," said Lieutenant Mira Vasquez, her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls, isolating the frequency. Rains turned toward the main screen, his sharp blue eyes narrowing. "Origin." Vasquez hesitated. "That's just it, sir. The source is shifting. One moment it's coming from deep space, the next from the void between star systems. It's almost as if it's moving," finished Dr. Alan Tress, the ship's xenolinguist. His face was pale as he studied the waveform on his screen. And fast. Rains exchanged a glance with his first officer, Commander Juno Park. She was rarely shaken, but even she looked unsettled. "Put it through," he ordered. The bridge was bathed in eerie green light as the screen filled with static. Then a voice, a sound that sent a chill through the bones of everyone present. "You are observed." The voice was deep, layered, as if a chorus of minds spoke in unison. The language was unlike any human dialect, yet somehow, impossibly, they understood it. A silence followed, thick with unspoken dread. Then the signal cut out. The arrival. Alarms blared across the Odyssey. "Contact. Bearing 237 Mark 12, shouted Lieutenant Harris, the ship's tactical officer. Something just dropped out of FTL. The screen flickered, and there it was, a ship unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Black as the void, shifting like liquid metal, its form was impossible to grasp fully. It bent light, distorting the stars behind it. A structure so alien it defied physics as they understood it. Rains clenched his fists. "Hail them." Vasquez tried. No response. "But they're scanning us." As if in answer, the ship changed shape, unfolding impossible appendages that crackled with an unknown energy. Then it spoke again. "You should know to be here." A pulse of energy surged from the alien vessel, slamming into the Odyssey. The ship lurched violently, and sparks erupted from consoles. The crew was thrown to the floor. Shields down to 40%. That was a warning shot. Harris shouted. Rains pulled himself up. "Return fire." The Odyssey's rail cannons roared, sending hypersonic rounds toward the alien craft. But before impact, the ship shifted. The rounds simply disappeared, swallowed into nothingness. Then, without warning, the alien vessel vanished, leaving behind only the lingering echo of its final message. UHAVBBENMA. A cold, unfamiliar fear settled over the crew. For the first time in history, humanity had met an intelligence beyond its own. And it was watching. And waiting. The mark of the Watchers. The Odyssey drifted silently in the void, its hull scorched from the energy pulse. The hum of the ship's systems, usually a comforting presence, now carried a tense, almost anxious undercurrent. Every officer, every crew member, felt it, the weight of something beyond their comprehension pressing down on them. The words of the alien entity still echoed in their minds. unyielding. The aftermath. Captain Elias Rains straightened his uniform, masking his unease behind a hardened expression. "Damage report," he ordered, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Lieutenant Harris, still reeling from the encounter, checked his console. Minimal hull damage. Shields recharging. "But Captain, our sensor logs." He hesitated. "Spit it out, Lieutenant," Commander Juno Park said, arms crossed. Harris swallowed. The energy reading from that ship, it shouldn't exist. It wasn't just bending light. It was bending reality itself. Rains frowned. "Explain." Dr. Alan Tress, the xenolinguist and physicist, leaned forward. "Sir, whatever that entity was, it wasn't just using technology beyond our understanding. It was warping the laws of physics. The way our weapons vanished. That wasn't shielding. It was like they were erased from existence." A cold silence settled over the bridge. "Do we have any idea who or what they are?" Rains asked. Tress shook his head. "Nothing like this has ever been encountered. Their ship didn't match any known structures or biological signatures." Vasquez, still analyzing the signal, suddenly stiffened. "Sir, we have a problem." Rains turned to her, bigger than the one we already have. She didn't smile. That transmission, it didn't just come from one location. The moment we received it, it was sent elsewhere. Park's eyes narrowed. "To where?" Vasquez hesitated before whispering, "Every known star system within 500 light years." Rains exhaled sharply. They weren't just talking to us. They were warning everyone. The message left behind. Deep in the Odyssey's research lab, Dr. Tress and his team worked frantically. The alien signal contained something more than just the eerie voice. Buried within the transmission was data, a pattern hidden beneath the spoken words. Tress decoded it, his hand shaking as he pieced the fragments together. At first, it seemed like nonsense, strange, shifting symbols that had no meaning. But then, as the pattern stabilized, something terrifying emerged. "Captain," Tress called out, "you need to see this." Rains arrived at the lab, Park at his side. The moment he saw the screen, his breath caught. It was a star map, one that stretched far beyond human-explored space. Countless systems, planets, and structures were marked across it. But what sent a chill through them all was what lay at the center. A massive void, surrounded by an ominous symbol, glowing red. Tress pointed to the markings. "That system right there. It's in our path. If we continue our course, we'll be heading straight toward whatever this is." "And what exactly is it?" Park asked. Tress's face was grim. "The markings, they're warnings. We've seen similar symbols in ancient Earth languages, markers of danger, of death." Rains clenched his jaw. "You're telling me we've been marked by something, and we're flying straight into a no-go zone?" Tress nodded. "It's not just a warning for us. It's a warning for everyone else. I think these beings are watchers. And whatever they're watching, it's in that void." The enemy awakens. Aboard the alien ship, though ship was the wrong word for something that seemed to exist in multiple states at once, the entity known as Stoleth gazed at the flickering star map before it. The human vessel had been marked. But the Watchers were not alone in this galaxy, and though the humans did not know it yet, they had already set something in motion. From the void, something stirred. Something ancient. Something that had once consumed civilizations whole. And now, thanks to humanity's arrival, it was waking up once more. Echoes of the forgotten war. The Odyssey's engines rumbled as the ship drifted through the vast abyss, heading unknowingly toward something no human had ever seen. Every officer and crew member felt it, that gnawing sensation at the back of their minds, an instinctual warning buried deep in their DNA. Something was watching them. The rift in space. Captain Elias Rains stood at the center of the bridge, his hands clenched behind his back. His blue eyes, sharp with focus, scanned the holographic star map projected before him. The void they were heading toward was unlike anything recorded. There was no light, no signals, no gravitational distortions. Nothing. A cosmic dead zone. Commander Juno Park shifted beside him, her brow furrowed. "Sir, I don't like this." That warning from the Watchers, whatever they were, it wasn't just a scare tactic. Rains sighed. "We've come too far to turn back now. If this is something bigger than us, then we need to understand what we're dealing with." A sharp ping interrupted them. "Captain," Lieutenant Vasquez said, her voice unnervingly calm. "We're detecting something." The main screen flickered to life, displaying the void ahead. And then, out of nowhere, the darkness cracked open. It was like the universe itself had been torn apart, a jagged, shifting wound in space. Strange tendrils of energy rippled out from its edges, pulsing with an eerie violet light. And beyond it, a derelict fleet. Hundreds of massive ancient ships drifted in the nothingness. Some were colossal, larger than anything humanity had ever built, while others looked as if they had been grown rather than constructed. Their hulls were scared, twisted as though torn apart by something far worse than war. No transmissions, no life signs, just ghosts of a battle fought long ago. The message left in ruins. Rain's throat tightened. "Tress, what are we looking at?" Dr. Alan Tress, hunched over his data stream, was barely breathing. This isn't just a battlefield, Captain. This is a graveyard. And from what I'm seeing, these ships belong to multiple civilizations, none of them human." Park exhaled. "A war? Between who?" Tress swallowed. "The better question is, who won?" Silence filled the bridge. Then something clicked. A repeating transmission, weak but still pulsing from one of the larger wrecks. "Captain," Vasquez said, "I think we just found our first clue." Rains nodded. "Bring it up." The screen flickered with static, then stabilized. A faint, flickering hologram appeared. An alien figure, humanoid but with angular crystalline skin and hollow glowing eyes. Its voice, though distorted, still carried an urgency that sent shivers down their spines. "To any who hear this, if you exist, if you still live, listen well. We were the last to stand before the end. We fought, we died, and now only echoes remain." Rains frowned. "The end." The hologram flickered, revealing more wreckage, more ruins, more horror. "It cannot be stopped. It does not reason. It does not sleep. It only hungers. And it is coming." The transmission cut out. The bridge was dead silent, marked for extinction. Park broke the silence. "We need to leave. Now." But before anyone could respond, the Odyssey's lights flickered, the ship groaning as though an unseen force had reached inside its circuits. Then a new voice, one that wasn't theirs. "You have seen." The air grew heavy, and shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls. "Now you are known." Alarms blared. "Something just came out of the rift," Harris shouted. On the main screen, a shape emerged from the void. It was impossible, a thing that had no definite form, shifting between geometric precision and chaotic distortion. Its surface was blacker than space, yet within it, shapes moved, as if something inside was constantly tearing itself apart and reforming. It was not a ship. It was a hunger given shape, and it had noticed them. The devourer stirs. The Odyssey's bridge was a battlefield of alarms, flashing red lights, and overlapping voices as the crew scrambled to make sense of what they had just witnessed. The thing outside was no ordinary alien vessel. It was a wound in reality itself. The way it twisted, folded, and stretched was not natural, as if space itself was being rewritten around it. It had seen them, and it was coming. The shadow that should not be. Get us out of here, Captain Rains barked. Helmsman Vasquez's hands flew over the controls, activating the ship's thrusters. The Odyssey lurched forward, but the moment it did, the lights flickered again. The engines coughed, then sputtered, as if something unseen had sunk its claws into the ship. "Captain," Vasquez said, her voice tight with panic. "We're not moving." Rains turned to the main screen where the formless entity loomed. It wasn't chasing them. It didn't need to. It was just there. And somehow, its presence alone was enough to hold them in place. Commander Park slammed her hand on the console. "Weapons systems, online now." Lieutenant Harris brought up the targeting systems, firing railguns. The Odyssey's forward cannons roared, launching hyper-accelerated slugs at the shifting entity. The projectiles never reached their target. Instead, they simply disappeared the moment they got too close, vanishing into the entity's shifting mass like stones sinking into water. No explosion, no impact, just nothing. The crew fell silent, realization sinking in. "This thing," Tress whispered, "it's not just absorbing matter. It's erasing it. The echo of a forgotten war." Then, the ship's communications flared to life. A signal, weak but insistent, was coming from the largest derelict ship nearby. "Captain," Vasquez called out, "we're receiving an emergency beacon from that wreck. It wasn't there before." Rains didn't hesitate. "Open a channel." The signal cracked with static before a voice, ancient, weary, filtered through. It was not human. It was deep, resonant, and carried the weight of something that had lived far longer than any of them. "You have lingered too long. Now it knows you, and it will not let you leave." A chilling pause. "It is the devourer of stars. And you are already dead." A desperate choice. Rains clenched his fists. "We're not dead yet. If you have information, we need it. What is that thing?" The alien voice hesitated. "It is the end. Static. It does not think as you do. It does not feel as you do. It only consumes. We tried to stop it. We failed. And so we erased ourselves, wiped our existence from the stars so it would not find our homeworld." Rains exhaled. "You hid from it. It cannot devour what it does not know exists." A grim realization settled over the bridge. The Watchers. They had warned them to leave. Because the moment humanity learned of the devourer, the moment they became aware of it, it had become aware of them. Park's voice was grave. "Then we just let it straight to Earth. The hunt begins." The Odyssey shuddered violently, sending crew members staggering. Sparks burst from consoles as an invisible force began to tear into the ship, like unseen fingers pulling at reality itself. "We need to go now," Vasquez shouted. Rains made a split-second decision. If this thing consumes everything in its path, then we give it something to chew on. He turned to Harris. "Fire the Hellstorm warheads at full yield." Harris's eyes widened. "Captain, if we detonate the close." "Do it." The Odyssey's missile bays opened, unleashing a salvo of high-yield Hellstorm warheads, nuclear payloads designed to rip apart capital ships. The devourer did not dodge. It simply let the warheads hit. The explosion consumed the battlefield, white-hot nuclear fire washing over the rift. The Odyssey rocketed backward, thrusters roaring at maximum output. And for a moment, the devourer disappeared. Had they done it? Had they destroyed it? The answer came in the next heartbeat. A voice, not through the comms, not through sound, but directly into their minds. "You delay the inevitable. You amuse us." The rift tore wider, a dark pulse of energy surging forward, and suddenly, the Odyssey was no longer in real space, cast into the unknown. Everything went black. No stars, no light, no sense of time. The ship's instruments went wild, readings fluctuating between infinity and zero. "Where the hell are we?" Park muttered. Tress checked his data feed. His face went pale. I don't think we're anywhere. The devourer had pulled them outside reality itself, and they were utterly alone. The void between realities. Silence. Not the kind found in deep space, where the absence of sound was replaced by the hum of life support systems or the distant chatter of a crew. This was a true silence, a cosmic void, where even the very fabric of existence seemed to be absent. The crew of the Odyssey had been cast out of reality itself, lost in the abyss. Status report. Captain Rains barked, gripping the armrest of his command chair. His voice seemed to vanish the moment it left his lips, swallowed by the void. Vasquez's hands moved across the controls with desperate precision. I don't know where we are, Captain. The instruments can't get a reading. There's nothing here. No stars, no planets, no cosmic background radiation. Nothing. Park glanced at her console, her fingers tightening into fists. That's impossible. Even in deep space, there should be something. Some particle drift. Some. It's not deep space. Tress interrupted. His voice was hoarse, his face pale. We're outside of space. This place doesn't exist in any known reality. A chilling realization settled over the bridge. They weren't just lost. They had been erased from the universe itself. The whispers in the dark. Then the voices began. Soft at first, muted whispers that flickered through the ship's speakers like distant radio static. Then louder, more insistent. They were not human. You do not belong here. The words carried a weight beyond sound. They pressed into the minds of the crew, not spoken, but implanted. Rains clenched his jaw. Who's there? No response, only more whispers. Park turned, her face pale. Captain, the air is getting thinner. Rain's stomach dropped. What? Tress ran a diagnostic. It doesn't make sense. The oxygen levels are dropping, but there's no breach. It's like the air itself is vanishing. Life support failure. Vasquez asked. Tress shook his head. No, it's not failing. The oxygen molecules are literally being unwritten. The whispers returned, but this time they grew teeth. You were never meant to see. You were never meant to know. You will fade. The rift opens. The lights flickered. The walls of the Odyssey shuddered, as if reality itself was struggling to hold them in place. And then, a tear appeared in the void. Not a normal rift, not like the cosmic wounds left by black holes. This was jagged, unnatural, as if something had taken a rusted knife to the fabric of existence and ripped it open. Through the wound, a figure stepped forward. It was tall, humanoid in shape, but wrong. Its body flickered between forms, 1 second clad in armor, the next dripping with shadow, the next appearing as a hollow husk of something that had once lived. It had no face, only a swirling mass of shifting darkness where its features should have been. And yet, when it spoke, its voice carried authority. You must leave. Now. The warning. Rains didn't hesitate. Who are you? The being's form flickered again. This time, it took on the brief silhouette of something human, before shifting back into an unknowable shape. The last watcher. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. You warned us before, Rains said slowly. You told us to leave the battlefield, that the devourer would notice us. But now where exactly are we? The last watcher took a step forward. The very air around it shivered, as if recoiling from its presence. You have been cast into the spaces between existence. The devourer does not consume only matter. It feeds upon possibility itself. Tress swallowed. Meaning, you were meant to die. Your fate was sealed the moment you witnessed its hunger. And yet you remain. This is an impossibility. And impossibilities do not last. Park narrowed her eyes. So what happens if we stay here too long? The last watcher's answer came immediately. You will cease to be. Not just die. Your existence will be undone. No memory, No trace, no history. You will have never been. A heavy silence fell over the crew. Then Rains set his jaw. Then tell us how to leave. The last watcher's form flickered again. This time, its shadowed eyes locked onto Rains. There is only one way. A dangerous gamble. The crew gathered as the last watcher reached into the void, pulling something from the nothingness. A black shard, its surface shifting, like a reflection that couldn't decide what it was reflecting. This is the seal of unmaking. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The words alone sent a shiver through the crew. Sounds inviting, Vasquez muttered. The last watcher ignored her. It is a fragment of the devourer itself, one torn free by those who came before you. It holds the power to rethread the fabric of fate. But it comes at a cost. Rains didn't like the sound of that. What kind of cost? The last watcher hesitated. A sacrifice. The crew stiffened. Trest frowned. What kind of sacrifice? The last watcher's shifting face turned towards Rains. One of you must remain behind. One must anchor the seal while the others pass through the rift it will open. Without an anchor, the devourer will sense the disturbance and consume you before you escape. Silence. Park clenched her fists. You're asking one of us to die. The last watcher didn't move. No. I am asking one of you to be erased. A fate worse than death. To be forgotten. To be nothing. The final decision. Rains looked at his crew. Park, the battle-hardened warrior who had fought by his side through so many wars. Vasquez, the best damn pilot he'd ever known. Tress, the scientist who had never stopped questioning, never stopped searching for answers. Harris, the weapons officer who had kept them alive more times than he could count. And then there was himself. He turned back to the last watcher. Can we choose? The last watcher simply said, You must. A grim silence settled over the bridge. They had minutes to decide. One of them would be erased, and the others would live. The price of existence. The air inside the Odyssey was growing thinner by the second. Every breath the crew took felt heavier, more labored, as if the very concept of breathing was slipping away. Captain Rains turned to his crew. The weight of the last watcher's words hung over them like a death sentence. One of them had to stay behind. Not just to die, but to be erased. We don't have much time, the last watcher intoned, its shifting form flickering between existence and void. The longer you hesitate, the less of you will remain. Vasquez's fingers tightened around the edges of her console. There has to be another way. Tress ran a hand through his hair, his voice tight. A paradox. If one of us stays, we never existed. But if we never existed, how could we have come this far? The watcher's faceless void stared at him. Your kind always asks these questions, but the devourer does not play by the rules of logic. It feasts on possibilities, and you, humans, are an aberration it was never meant to encounter. The air shivered, reality itself trembling at the edges. They were running out of time. The volunteer. Rains clenched his jaw, his mind racing. He had led these people into this unknown, and now he had to make a choice. I'll do it. The words came from Harris, the weapons officer, the youngest among them. The crew whipped around to face him. The hell you will, Vasquez snapped. Harris forced a grin. We all know it makes the most sense. I don't have family waiting for me back home. I'm not the genius scientist. I'm not the best pilot. I'm just a guy with a trigger finger. If someone has to go, it might as well be me. Park shook her head, her face tight with rage. No, Harris, that's not how this works. We're a crew. We don't. That's exactly why I'm doing it, Harris interrupted, his voice firm. We're a crew. That means some of us don't make it home. The ship groaned, reality fracturing around them. The devourer was sensing them. The last watcher stepped forward, the black shard in its hand pulsating with something older than time itself. The choice is made. The unmaking. Harris stepped up to the watcher, staring at the black shard in its palm. "What's it going to feel like?" he asked, his voice steady. The watcher's form flickered, its presence barely holding in this fragile space. "You will not feel pain. You will not feel anything at all." Harris exhaled. "That's comforting." Rains reached out, gripping Harris's shoulder. "This isn't right." Harris smirked. "Captain, nothing about this whole damn thing has been right." No one had words. Vasquez turned away, fists clenched. Park's jaw was tight, her hands trembling at her sides. Tress stood frozen, his eyes hollow. Then Harris reached out and touched the shard of unmaking. The moment his fingers made contact, the ship lurched. The air seemed to scream, a noise that wasn't sound but something deeper, something that reached into the fabric of existence itself. And then, Harris began to vanish. Not like a body disintegrating, not like death. His form unraveled, as if he had never been there at all. A universe without him. Park gasped, clutching her head, eyes wide. I can't remember." Vasquez staggered back, confusion flooding her face. Who was just standing there? Tress blinked rapidly, gripping the console as his mind fought against the loss. He knew something was wrong, knew something had just been taken, but he couldn't remember what. Rains felt his breath catch in his throat. His own memories were slipping, fading like mist in the morning sun. There had been someone here, someone who mattered. But now, there was only emptiness. The last watcher turned, its work complete. "You may leave now." It extended its hand, and the black shard fractured, sending a pulse through the void. A rift tore open, this time leading back to the world they knew, back to existence. Rain swallowed hard, looking at his crew. They looked shaken, but they had survived. And yet, there was a hole in the universe where someone should have been. Returned to reality. The crew stumbled through the rift. A jarring shock rippled through them as they crossed the threshold, as if they had just been yanked back into a reality that had already moved on without them. The Odyssey reappeared in the known universe, right back at the edge of the battlefield where the Devourer had first been sighted. Everything looked the same. And yet, something was missing. Rains exhaled, gripping his chair. Systems check. Vasquez ran her hands across the console, her movements quick but hesitant, like she was fighting against a part of her mind that was telling her she had forgotten something. "Ship's intact," she muttered. "Everything's the way it should be." Tress turned to Rains. "Captain, I feel like..." He trailed off. Rains knew exactly what he was trying to say. There was an absence, a missing piece of the puzzle, but there was no memory to connect it to, because there was nothing left. The crew sat in silence, the weight of their return pressing down on them. They had survived. They had escaped the void. And yet, the price had been paid in full. Someone had once stood beside them. Someone had laughed, fought, lived among them. Someone had been their friend. And now, they were gone. Forever. Humanity remembers. The Odyssey drifted in silence. The crew sat in their stations, staring at their consoles as if trying to piece together something that had been stolen from them. Everything was exactly as it should be. And yet, something was missing. Captain Rains gripped the arms of his chair. A heavy pressure sat in his chest, an unexplainable hollowness, like a deep wound that had been cauterized before he could even acknowledge the pain. They had escaped. They had returned to reality. But at what cost? His mind felt like it was straining against something unseen, like a missing page in a book he had already read. His heart knew something had been taken, but when he searched for a name, a face, there was nothing. A cold sweat ran down his back. He knew this wasn't right. Vasquez let out a frustrated exhale, tapping at her console harder than necessary. "Something feels off." Tress shook his head, rubbing his temple. "It's like we left something behind, but I don't know what." Park let out a hollow chuckle. "Maybe we all just need some sleep." But no one moved, because deep down, they all knew the truth. Something had been lost. The name that wasn't there. Rains activated the ship's logs. The mission records were intact from the moment they left Earth, their encounter with the Devourer, their desperate escape into the void. But there was a gap, a small empty space in the logs, a break in the sequence, like something had been cut out, like someone had been cut out. Bridge crew, Rains said slowly, his voice controlled but firm. Roll call. A moment of silence. Vasquez. Here. Tress. Here. Park. Here. Each name sounded right. Each response felt correct. But still, that empty space remained. Rains swallowed. There were 4 of you, right? Park's brow furrowed. Yeah, of course, Captain. Vasquez shifted uncomfortably. Wait, we're there. Trest hesitated, staring at the empty station near the weapons console. He trailed off, his breath quickening. His fingers twitched as if trying to grasp something that wasn't there. There was a station there. A chair, a console. But no one to sit in it. A name almost came to Rains. A shape, a shadow of a memory. Something just at the edge of recognition. And then, nothing. A warning that came too late. A notification blinked on Vasquez's screen. Captain. Her voice was tense. We're receiving a transmission from Earth Alliance Command. Rains sat forward. Put it through. The screen flickered, revealing Admiral Howard, his face grim. Odyssey, you're alive. There was something in his tone, a mix of relief and dread. We made it back, Rains said cautiously. What's the situation? The Admiral exhaled. You're the only ones who did. Silence fell over the bridge. What do you mean? Rains asked. The Admiral's voice was heavy. The fleet, our entire force that engaged the Devourer, never returned. No wreckage, no distress signals. It's like they were erased from existence. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. That feeling, that emptiness, it wasn't just them, it was everywhere. What happened? Vasquez asked, her fingers tightening into a fist. The Admiral's expression darkened. We received something. A message, but not in words. More like an imprint. A warning from something ancient. Tress swallowed hard. What did it say? The Admiral's next words made the temperature on the bridge drop. It said, humanity was never supposed to be here. The shadow of the Devourer. A cold dread settled over them. The Devourer had not just attacked them. It had not just fought them. It had tried to erase them. Rains clenched his jaw. Did Earth lose any records? Did you forget anyone? The Admiral shook his head. No, but we feel it, like something is missing. That was when the lights on the Odyssey flickered. A low hum reverberated through the ship, and suddenly every console went dark. The ship lurched as if something had just touched it. Rains stood. Report. Vasquez frantically tapped at the controls. I don't know. Our systems are reading an anomaly, but there's nothing there. The ship shook again, as if it were being pulled by something unseen. And then, a single line of text appeared on the main screen. Not from the Admiral. Not from Earth. From somewhere else. A message. A message from the void. A message from Harris. The text was simple. A final warning. It neno budas you escape heat. And it's coming back. The screen shut off. The lights returned to normal. The humming stopped. But the silence it left behind was deafening. The fight that wasn't over. Rains exhaled, his heart pounding. The Devourer was not gone. It had not forgotten them. Somehow, through some twist of fate, Harris, or whatever was left of him, had managed to send them a warning. It wasn't over. And now, they had a choice. Run. Or fight. Rains turned to his crew. Set a course for Earth, he ordered. The galaxy needs to know what we found. The Odyssey's engines roared to life. The fight for humanity's existence had just begun. And this time, they were ready.